We now leave broadcasting and re-enter the print world. The Ed Cunningham Award, sponsored by the Ford Motor Company, is for Best International Reporting in Magazines. And the winner is Charles Graeber for Bloomberg Business Week. His story on one Japanese family in the aftermath of the devastating earthquake and tsunami, the title, Nothing to Do But Start Over. And it describes how people survive and continue living.
Thank you so much. This is obviously an enormous honor. Also a great relief. I've been spending most of my time finishing a book on the most prolific serial killer in American history, who talks only to me, whose name happens to be Charlie also. So I'm always writing these terrible things. Charlie did this horrible thing. So this is really very nice. Thank you. This is a story I think the journalists on the ground will really appreciate. Didn't seem possible, or I had no idea why it would be possible. I flew into Tokyo on an empty jumbo jet. Tokyo was dark. I had all my camping gear. I had a giant bag of dried food from Walmart. The buildings were swaying like daisies with aftershocks, voices on the loudspeaker, nuclear meltdown, all that business that David covered very, very well. And I was trying to get north into the destruction zone, and I sort of thought, I've seen this movie, and it doesn't end well. I didn't have a fixer, didn't have a translator at that point. I had a Geiger counter on my hip, and a good sensibility, and a great assignment. For Brad Wieners at Bloomberg, which was essentially bear witness. Get as deep into the destruction zone as you can, if it's possible, and bear witness. Turn this news into a story. Make it real, and swing for the fences. It was impossible to imagine how I would actually make that true. As it happened, just quickly, because I know that these things should be quick. Tried to avoid the radiation business as much as I could by flying wide around and up north. I got a bus in the middle of the country, found the last car, the last tank of gas in the Alps of Japan. I had one tank to make it all work, and I was also on deadline too, because the fact is that no one really cares about a tragedy and when it's stale. I want this to really stick. I really want, I want to make this matter. So I had to do it quick. I had one tank of gas to do it. And came out of those mountains and came into, and the mountains are hard against the sea there on the East Coast, and came into a world you could not imagine. It's in the pictures, we all have, but imagine driving from here to Maryland, Boston, and seeing nothing along the way, but your GPS is telling you there are towns on the map. Just everything wiped out. And what I saw basically were pictures, but I didn't see a story. The tragedy was in the air, but it was just not possible to put on the page. I couldn't imagine. There were no people. And steered through that trash for as long as I could. The Army had picked the lane, and what wasn't washed out, I drove. And finally, magical moment, which again many journalists may identify with, imagined or not. The sun was setting, snow started falling on the trash. Snow lit up by the sunset, and I just said yes now. And I turned right into the trash, right up a little lane that had somehow existed there, up as far as I could. Got out of the car, started to walk, and eventually up a hill I found a group of people, a bunch of dirty guys, some women that were hanging around a fire, roasting cigarettes, trying to dry them out, drinking whiskey from cracked china cups, in a little tin lean-to right next to a Buddhist temple, right where the trash line of the tsunami seemed to have stopped. And I thought, this is the place, and I'm going to stay here. I'm going to put everything on this, and I just stayed there until I became a familiar face by that fire. And 10 days later, I left with the story of Kenji Sano, and it was at 81. I had seen that story, that city destroyed 3 times. The first time when he was 3 years old and his mother held him by the tombstones, right by where where I first met him. When the first tsunami wiped that town out. The second time when the American bombardment wiped that town out, different that time because it was fire. There was nothing left, not trash moved around. And the third time, just that time right then. And then his son and his grandson, who's trying to go to college, and returned home 10 days later, wrote it up, handed in 22,000 words, which Brad Winters is very, very kind about. They published it about half that, which is still pretty long. And you know, it feels rude going into a tragedy and intruding on other people's lives. This is, we're drawn to it as journalists. It justifies a lot of poetry, I think. But the truth is, it does feel rude to say, okay, Mr. Sano, how did you feel when you saw your wife sucked out that window? You know, it seems really irreverent, and you want to have some sort of relevance. But I'm Mr. Sano saying very specifically, tell the world what you saw. They wanted that, and that really justified everything for me. So I really appreciate Bloomberg, especially for having the confidence in the pockets to say swing for the fences and actually publishing at that length, and obviously the OPC board for honoring it. Thank you.